Hello, listeners. This is the reading of the Sabbath School lesson for the fourth and final quarter of 2022.
The series is titled On Death, Dying and the Future Hope. The author is Dr. Alberto Tim, while your readers are Percy and Sibylla Harrold. Lesson 3 is ready for teaching on October 15. It's titled Understanding Human Nature, and I'm Percy Harrold. Monday, October 10. The soul who sins shall die. Read Ezekiel chapter 18, verses 4 and 20, and Matthew chapter 10, verse 28. How can these verses help us understand the nature of the human soul? Ezekiel 18, verse 4, Behold, all souls are mine. The soul of the Father as well as the soul of the Son is mine. The soul who sins shall die. And verse 20, The soul who sins shall die. The Son shall not bear the guilt of the Father, nor the Father bear the guilt of the Son. The righteousness of the righteous shall be upon him, and the wickedness of the wicked shall be upon himself. And Matthew chapter 10, verse 28. And do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Human life in this sinful world is fragile and transitory, as we read in Isaiah chapter 40, verses 1 to 8. Comfort, yes, comfort my people, says your God. Speak comfort to Jerusalem, and cry out to her that her warfare is ended, that her iniquity is pardoned, for she has received from the Lord's hand double for all her sins. The voice of one crying in the wilderness, Prepare the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be exalted, and every mountain and hill brought low. The crooked places shall be made straight, and the rough places smooth. The glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. For the mouth of the Lord has spoken. The voice said, Cry out. And he said, What shall I cry? All flesh is grass, and all its loveliness is like the flower of the field. The grass withers, the flower fades, because the breath of the Lord blows upon it. Surely the people are grass. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God stands forever. Nothing infected by sin can be eternal by nature. Therefore, as we read in Romans 5:12, therefore, just as through one man sin entered the world, and death through sin, and thus death spread to all men, because all sinned. Death is the natural consequence of sin, which affects all life here. On this matter, there are two important biblical concepts. One is that human beings and animals both die. As stated by King Solomon, Surely the fate of human beings is like that of the animals. The same fate awaits them both. As one dies, so dies the other. All have the same breath. Humans have no advantage over animals. All go to the same place. All come from dust, and to dust all return. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 19 and 20. The second concept is that the physical death of a person implies the cessation of his or her existence as a living soul. Remember the Hebrew word nephesh? In Genesis 2:16 and 17, God had warned Adam and Eve that if they should ever sin by eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they would die. Echoing this warning, the Lord reinforced the point in Ezekiel 18, chapter 4, and verse 20. The soul who sins shall die. This statement has two main implications. One is that since all human beings are sinners, all of us are under the unavoidable process of aging and dying, as we read in Romans chapter 3, verses 9 to 18. What then? Are we better than they? Not at all. For we have previously charged both Jews and Greeks that they are all under sin. As it is written, There is none righteous, no, not one. There is none who understands. There is none who seeks after God. They have all turned aside. They have together become unprofitable. There is none who does good, no, not one. Their throat is an open tomb. With their tongues they have practised deceit. The poison of asps is under their lips, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and misery are their ways, and the way of peace they have not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes. And verse 23, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Another implication is that this biblical concept makes void the popular notion of a supposed natural immortality of the soul. If the soul is immortal and exists alive in another realm after death, then we don't really die after all, do we? In contrast, the biblical solution for the dilemma of death is not a bodiless soul migrating either into paradise or into purgatory or even into hell. The solution is indeed the final resurrection of those who died in Christ, as Jesus stated in his sermon on the bread of life in John 6 verse 40. Everyone who sees the Son and believes in him may have everlasting life, and I will raise him up at the last day. And so to finish the day, why is the surety of the second coming, which is made certain by Christ's first coming, and after all, what good was Christ's first coming without the second, so crucial to all that we believe? What hope would we have without the promise of his return? This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. And you can listen and watch at the same time on YouTube. Remember, God is always faithful.